Have you ever looked at your life and felt that something was wrong with you? Maybe you made a mistake that still follows you. Maybe you failed at something important. Or maybe you compare yourself with successful people and wonder why you are not as confident, talented, or perfect as they seem. Today, this feeling is everywhere. On social media, people show their victories, smiles, and best moments. But they rarely show their fear, rejection, loneliness, or sleepless nights. So we begin to believe that everyone else is complete, while we are the only ones carrying cracks. But what if your imperfections are not proof that you are weak? What if they are proof that you survived? My name is Zylos, and this story may change the way you see your flaws forever. Many years ago, Vienna was preparing for an international music festival. Musicians and instrument makers arrived from Paris, Rome, London, Tokyo, and New York. At the center of the festival was Adrian Vale, one of Europe's most respected conductors. After 40 years of performing, Adrian announced that the festival's final night would be his last concert. For that performance, he wanted a new violin. So he announced a competition. Every violin maker was invited to create an instrument that represented the human spirit. The winner would receive a great reward, and the violin would be played during Adrian's final concert. The finest craftsmen immediately began working. Some searched for rare wood in distant mountains. Others spent all their savings on perfect materials. They polished every surface and measured every curve. Everyone wanted to create a flawless violin. Months later, the grand concert hall was filled with artists, musicians, and visitors. Dozens of beautiful violins stood proudly on the stage. One came from Paris and shone like gold. Another came from Milan and had taken 2 years to complete. A violin from Tokyo had been designed with incredible precision. The audience admired them. "That one must win," someone whispered. "No, the Italian violin is perfect," another replied. Then a young woman named Elena walked onto the stage. She came from a small workshop near Florence. She was not famous, and she had no team of assistants. She carried a simple wooden case. When she opened it, the hall became silent. Inside was a beautiful violin, but a dark line ran across its back. The wood had once been split and repaired. The scar was impossible to ignore. Some people began laughing. One craftsman said, "You had months to prepare and you brought a damaged violin." Another added, "This competition is for great instruments, not broken ones." Elena did not argue. She simply stood beside her violin and waited. Adrian approached her. looked at the dark line and asked, "Why did you not hide this scar?" Elena took a breath. "Because hiding it would make the violin dishonest," she said. The crowd became quiet. This wood came from a maple tree in the mountains of Slovenia. One night, the tree was struck by lightning. The trunk split, and every craftsman rejected it. They said the damage could never be completely removed. Elena looked at the scar. But the tree had been damaged, and it had still survived. I repaired the wood, but I left the line visible because it is part of the instrument's story. A man in the audience called out, "A scar does not make it beautiful." Elena looked toward him and replied, "No, but survival does." Nobody laughed after that. Elena continued, "Every person carries a scar somewhere. Some carry failure, some carry rejection, some have lost someone they loved. Others are fighting fears they have never shared. We hide these parts because we think people will respect us only when we appear perfect. But being strong does not mean that nothing has ever broken. It means that breaking was not the end." Adrian asked a musician to play the violin. The musician placed it beneath his chin and lifted the bow. The first note was soft. It was not the loudest sound heard that day, and it was not technically perfect, but it felt alive. The melody sounded like someone walking alone through a storm. Then it slowly became warmer. It sounded like hope returning. It sounded like a person falling, learning, and standing again. A woman in the front row wiped a tear from her face. An elderly man closed his eyes. Even the craftsmen who had laughed were now silent. The violin did not produce a flawless sound. It produced an honest one. When the final note disappeared, the hall remained silent for a few seconds. Then everyone stood and applauded. Later that evening, Adrian announced the winner. He looked at all the polished instruments. Then he pointed toward Elena's violin. "For my final concert, I choose the violin with the scar." The audience cheered, but one famous craftsman protested. "How can a repaired violin defeat instruments that took years to perfect?" Adrian replied calmly. "These instruments show what people can create when everything goes according to plan." Then he looked at Elena's violin. "But this one shows what the human spirit can create when life does not go according to plan. Anyone can appear strong when nothing has tested them. Real strength is revealed after the storm. Anyone can feel confident after success. Real confidence is built when someone fails, learns, and tries again. This scar is not only proof that the wood was broken, it is proof that breaking was not the end of its story." On the final night of the festival, Adrian played Elena's violin before thousands of people. The music filled the hall. People from different countries listened together. They did not know one another's lives, but they understood the feeling behind the melody. Because everyone had lost something. Everyone had feared something. Everyone had regretted something. And everyone hoped that their worst moment would not become their final chapter. After the concert, the violin was placed in Vienna's music museum. Over the years, thousands of people came to see it. They did not come because it was perfect. They came because of the scar. A student who had failed an important examination saw it and decided to try again. A woman who had lost her job remembered that one difficult season did not define her future. A man recovering from an accident stopped feeling ashamed of the marks on his body. The violin reminded them of one simple truth. Healing does not always erase the evidence of pain. Sometimes healing leaves a line. My friend, you may also carry a scar. It may be visible, or it may exist only inside your heart. Maybe someone rejected you. Maybe you failed in business, education, or a relationship. Maybe you made choices you deeply regret. But remember this: you are not only the person who was hurt, you are also the person who continued. You are not only the person who failed, you are also the person who learned. You are not only the person who fell, you are also the person who can rise again. Your imperfections do not remove your value. Your past does not cancel your future. And accepting yourself does not mean that you stop improving. It means that you stop hating yourself while you improve. Personally, I believe the world doesn't need more people pretending to be perfect. It needs more people who can honestly say, I have struggled too, but I am still moving forward. Your scar is not your entire story. What you choose to build after the pain is what gives that scar meaning. So whenever you feel broken, remember Elena's violin. The scar did not stop the music. It became part of the reason the music touched so many hearts. If this story helped you see your imperfections differently, share it with someone who feels they are not good enough. And for more motivational stories that improve your English, teach meaningful life lessons, and build a stronger mindset, subscribe to the channel. Because a scar does not mean your story is over. Sometimes it marks the exact place where your strength began.
The story of the broken violin. In a quiet town surrounded by hills, there was a small music shop owned by an old man named Samuel. The shop was filled with beautiful instruments: guitars, pianos, flutes, and violins. People traveled from nearby cities to buy instruments from him because he was known for choosing only the finest pieces. Near the entrance stood a display of shiny violins. But in the darkest corner of the shop, hidden behind a shelf, lay an old violin covered in dust. It had a visible crack running down its side. One of its tuning pegs was worn out, and its wood had lost its shine. Every customer who noticed it would ask the same question. "Why do you keep that broken violin?" Samuel would simply smile and reply, "Because it still has a story to tell." No one understood what he meant. Years passed, and the violin remained unsold. One rainy afternoon, a young man named Ethan entered the shop. Ethan dreamed of becoming a musician, but life had not been kind to him. He had failed music auditions, faced criticism from teachers, and struggled with self-doubt. Deep inside, Ethan believed he was not good enough. As he looked around the shop, his eyes landed on the broken violin. "Can I see that one?" he asked. Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Most people want the perfect violins. Why this one?" Ethan shrugged. "Maybe because it reminds me of myself." The old man carefully handed him the violin. As Ethan held it, he noticed every scratch and every mark on its surface. It wasn't beautiful like the others. It looked damaged, just like how he felt inside. "How much is it?" Ethan asked. Samuel smiled. "Play it first." Ethan laughed. "This thing is broken." "Perhaps," Samuel replied, "or perhaps you're judging it too quickly." Curious, Ethan tightened the strings and slowly moved the bow across them. The first note surprised him. The sound wasn't weak. It wasn't ugly. It was rich, warm, and filled with emotion. He played another note, then another. Soon, music filled the room. People walking outside stopped and listened. Here's a longer motivational story suitable for a 15 to 20-minute narration video. Think your flaws make you weak? The story of the broken violin. In a quiet town surrounded by hills, there was a small music shop owned by an old man named Samuel. The shop was filled with beautiful instruments: guitars, pianos, flutes, and violins. People traveled from nearby cities to buy instruments from him because he was known for choosing only the finest pieces. Near the entrance stood a display of shiny violins. But in the darkest corner of the shop, hidden behind a shelf, lay an old violin covered in dust. It had a visible crack running down its side. One of its tuning pegs was worn out, and its wood had lost its shine. Every customer who noticed it would ask the same question. "Why do you keep that broken violin?" Samuel would simply smile and reply, "Because it still has a story to tell." No one understood what he meant. Years passed, and the violin remained unsold. One rainy afternoon, a young man named Ethan entered the shop. Ethan dreamed of becoming a musician, but life had not been kind to him. He had failed music auditions, faced criticism from teachers, and struggled with self-doubt. Deep inside, Ethan believed he was not good enough. As he looked around the shop, his eyes landed on the broken violin. "Can I see that one?" he asked. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Most people want the perfect violins. Why this one? Ethan shrugged. Maybe because it reminds me of myself. The old man carefully handed him the violin. As Ethan held it, he noticed every scratch and every mark on its surface. It wasn't beautiful like the others. It looked damaged, just like how he felt inside. How much is it? Ethan asked. Samuel smiled. Play it first. Ethan laughed. This thing is broken. Perhaps, Samuel replied, or perhaps you're judging it too quickly. Curious, Ethan tightened the strings and slowly moved the bow across them. The first note surprised him. The sound wasn't weak. It wasn't ugly. It was rich, warm, and filled with emotion. He played another note, then another. Soon, music filled the room. People walking outside stopped and listened through the window. The violin produced a sound unlike any other instrument in the shop. When Ethan finished, he looked shocked. How is this possible? He asked. Samuel sat quietly for a moment before speaking. Many years ago, that violin belonged to a famous musician. During a terrible storm, it was damaged while protecting a child from falling debris. The musician survived, but the violin was cracked. Ethan listened carefully. Everyone thought it was ruined, Samuel continued. Experts said it would never sound the same again. But after being repaired, something remarkable happened. What? The crack changed its voice. Ethan stared at the violin. It wasn't perfect anymore, but its imperfections gave it character. The music became deeper, more emotional, more human. The old man leaned forward. People stopped hearing a flawless instrument. They started hearing a story. Those words struck Ethan deeply. For years, he had focused on everything wrong with himself. His failures, his mistakes, his weaknesses, the things he couldn't do. But he had never considered that those experiences might actually shape who he was becoming. Samuel smiled. You know, Ethan, most people spend their lives trying to hide their flaws. Because flaws make us weak, Ethan replied. Samuel shook his head. No, quitting makes us weak. Giving up makes us weak. Thinking we're worthless because we're imperfect, that makes us weak. He pointed to the violin. This instrument isn't special because it's flawless. It's special because it kept making music after it was broken. The room became silent. Ethan felt as though someone had finally spoken the truth he needed to hear. That day, he bought the broken violin. Over the next few years, Ethan practiced harder than ever before. Whenever he made mistakes, he remembered the cracked violin. Whenever people criticized him, he remembered the cracked violin. Whenever he felt like quitting, he remembered the cracked violin. Slowly, he improved. Not because he became perfect, but because he stopped waiting to become perfect before moving forward. Years later, Ethan performed on one of the biggest stages in the country. Thousands of people came to hear him play. As he walked onto the stage, reporters noticed something unusual. Among all the expensive instruments available to him, he still carried the old cracked violin. After the concert, a journalist asked him, "Why do you still play that broken violin?" Ethan smiled. It reminds me that perfection is not what creates greatness. The reporter looked confused. Ethan held up the violin and said, "This crack once made people think the violin had lost its value, but the crack became part of its beauty." The same is true for people. Our struggles, failures, and scars don't reduce our worth. They become part of our story. The audience applauded. And at that moment, countless people realized something important. No one is perfect. Every person carries cracks. Every person has flaws. Every person has failed at something. But flaws do not determine your future. Your response to them does. A broken violin can still create beautiful music. A person who has made mistakes can still achieve incredible things. A scar does not mean you're weak. Sometimes it proves how strong you've been. No one is perfect in life. Your flaws, failures, and imperfections do not make you weak. They make you human. Like the broken violin,